Welcome back, everybody, to Real Estate Junkies Coast to Coast. I'm your co host, Rusty Ham on the West Coast. Rick is on the East Coast. Rick, say hi.
Hi, and it's chilly. Feels like 5 degrees today.
5 degrees. Yeah, and it's getting a little chilly on the South Coast out here in Cali. Rick, when this episode comes out, it is going to be Christmas Day. So I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas to everyone.
Absolutely. Everybody have a Merry Christmas.
What did you wish for Christmas, Rick?
What did I wish for Christmas? That's an off the cuff question.
Yeah,
I think just a very prosperous new year.
that's right. Me too. We got a lot of stuff in the works. I know you have a couple deals in the works. I have a deal, so hopefully when the new year turns around, we're gonna be rocking and rolling. So let's get into again. If you guys don't know about this podcast, we talk about the three pillars of businesses, which is mindset, skill set, and systems. We have talked about mindset. We've done skill set. We're going to talk about systems today as our warm up. And Rick, um, we don't recommend for new associates, right, to get into CRMs and systems right away because it could hinder them, right? Or it could be a roadblock, right?
It can be a real distraction trying to figure it out.
Yeah, because it's awesome, right? CRMs are awesome when you set them up because then it can be automated, right? You can press a button, a drop down button, and now it shoots out a workflow, right? But you got to set up that workflow, and it takes a while.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, you need to understand the processes before you go ahead and you work on those workflows so you know what it's really trying to do.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that workflow. So, and then if I'm going to get a link for REI Blackbook. So if you guys want to sign up for REI Blackbook, if you're an investor and you need a CRM, I would look into REI Blackbook because that's what we use. And we love them. We love their customer service. We love that they're always innovating and improving because that's one of our core values, right? They're always looking to get one step ahead of everybody else, especially with AI coming up and a lot of things. But what they did for us, and maybe we can just get into the 7 steps to a taken, and then how did you, Rick, incorporate the 7 steps to a taken into our workflow as far as REI Blackbook? So what's the 7 steps to a taken, first of all?
So, of course, 7 steps to a taken is we have our initial call to the seller. And then what this step two would be a follow up email, which we usually send a sell doc, which just has an overview of what we do. And then either attach a video to it or a link to our website with the videos. And then 2 or 3 days later, we follow up with the seller, or we have a prearranged date to follow up with the seller,
So that's,
answer any questions they may have.
yep, that's step 3, right? Step 3 is the follow up.
That's step three. Step four is to set an appointment on that follow up. So you're going to step three. Yeah, step three is to book the follow up.
Yeah.
To book the appointment. There we go. And then when you book the appointment, you want to follow up before you go on the appointment, either the day before or before you leave for the appointment to make sure somebody's going to be there.
Yeah. Also, if there's a mortgage, we want to get a mortgage statement from them as you arrive. A lot of times they'll send it to you via email response, but a lot of times we'll step 3 is follow up. Hey, Mr. Seller, when's a good time for me to get out there? Before I get out there, will you have a mortgage statement ready, just so we can make accurate, make you an accurate offer? So go on to step 5.
So once you confirm that appointment, which is really step four, then step five, of course, is do your comps research. That's when you get back from your appointment and you structure the deal. And then step six is you send an offer out to the seller, and then you want to follow up with that one as well. And then step seven is a combination. You send the contract out, get the contract signed for a taken.
Yeah. So thank you, Rick. Awesome job. Taken, for everybody who doesn't know what a taken is, it's just getting a house under contract through one of our 4 game plans, which is a lease purchase, owner financing, sub 2, or an AO, right? So what you did, Rick, is you coordinated with REI Blackbook and you created a workflow within REI Blackbook of the 7 steps to a taken. So if you are in our community, this is we call it all in one. It's almost an all in one. You get a website, you get a phone number that it's going to record every call. You're going to get the workflow, right? And I think we're working on properties that are within the community. I don't know if we're there yet, um, but the 7 steps to a taken is important because if you're new and you're just coming into the community, right? And let's say hypothetically you do get the CRM, which we don't recommend, and there's reasons why we don't recommend. We can get into that in a little bit. It's more of a mindset really than it is system set. But the 7 steps to a taken, you speak to somebody, you're like, hey, Rick, would you be open to a lease purchase on financing? Yeah, send me some information. So, okay, I'll send you some information. So what you do in the CRM is you just do the drop down, you click a workflow and it says step 2. And then step 2 is going to create a task, right? Hey, send email with the sell doc, right? And then once you do that, you click a button and you say step 3. And the step 3 is going to create a task for you to follow up on that email that you sent the seller, right? And then the follow up is basically, hey, Rick, I was calling because I sent you an email a couple of days ago. I was wondering if you had a couple minutes to, do you have any questions on, that email that I sent? A lot of times they don't. A lot of times they're like, oh, I didn't read it. So you just kind of maybe a lot of times it's more revisiting that first phone call.
Right, just taking it the next step. And it's always good to set the expectation as to what the next step is for the seller so they understand.
Right. Yeah. And then on step 3, right? So, hey, Rick, it sounds like you're still open to the idea. How about I come see the home on Wednesday at 1 o'clock? I'm going to be in that area on another appointment. So how about if I stop by and check out the home? Typically, we're not. We say that we are just because we want the seller to think that we're really busy. No, I'm just kidding. We do have a day. I have Fridays. I don't know what day you have set. I have Fridays set for my appointments. So I typically try to set my appointments on Friday, and I'll set 2 or 3, where I'm hopping to one house to another. So we're setting that appointment on step 3. Step 4, we're going to the appointment. Hopefully if they have a mortgage, they have a mortgage statement. And that's important for a lease purchase and or subject to, because we're locking in their equity. So we want to find out what the exact mortgage balance is so we can lock in their equity. And that's what we're going to do as far as present an offer, right? Our offer isn't price, right, Rick? We don't offer prices on lease purchase.
Lease purchase, right?
Yep, not on lease purchase. We are locking in their equity. Now, it's understood that equity plus the mortgage is the purchase price, right? It's kind of, but in our contract, we don't have purchase price. And if you guys look through our lease purchase, if you go through the QoS system, you look through the lease purchase contract, there's no purchase price. It's equity. We're locking in equity, right? So we do our research and now describe the research part, step 5, because you know, price isn't necessarily an issue, it's the equity. However, we do want to make sure that we're paying a fair market value. We're not overpaying, right?
Right. You're going to run comps. You're going to look at what the properties rent for in the area, what your competition is. So, in other words, rent comps. So you can figure out what you're going to get from the buyer, the end buyer, and you can kind of project that. And you want the property tax information. It's compiling all the data to put together your deal structure and then your offer.
Right. And so step 6, you're sending the offer. And basically what we're trying to do when you're veterans like us, we've been in the community for a while, when we're at the appointment, we're sort of constructing the offer with the seller while we're there, right? If you're brand new, it's you're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, you have no clue what to do. So it's just basically you're just, hi, I'm here to see the house, and then you see the house, and you come home and you work with your coach to construct that offer and all that. But you and I, Rick, when we're at the appointment, we're constructing that with the seller, right? So step 6 is basically, hey, this is what we agreed on, right?
I mean, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll have a lot of the information before I even go on the appointment. I have not necessarily seen the mortgage statement, but I can go and kind of project what it could be or what the numbers most likely would be. So I have an idea when I go meet with the seller how that's going to be constructed and some options.
Yeah, there's not lease purchase are typically just one option, typically. But you can do different options. But a lot of times with owner finance or sub two, you're going to do different options. We'll get into sub two in just a second. And then step 7 is you can either do DocuSign or you can, but I'm not sure how you do it. But we just send the contract over for the seller to sign it. Once they sign it, that is a taken. And then once we get that taken, then we start working on the tenant buyer side where we try to find a third party tenant buyer.
Right. And one of the things I'll say with REI Blackbook, one of the nicest features of it now that they've incorporated AI, transcribes that telephone call that with the seller and lets you know what are their, why are they moving, why are they selling, how much they're selling it for, all the details of the call. And it also allows you to take notes while you're on the call.
Yep. Yeah, real good stuff. REI Blackbook, again, it's all in one. And we're continuing to work with, again, one of our core values with Wicked Smart is innovate and improve. And that's why we like REI Blackbook, because of they're constantly looking for ways to make things easier for us, right?
Right. One of the new things that they're working on now, from my understanding, is to be able to run comps and everything else right out of REI Blackbook.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because right now we have REI Blackbook, and then we go to another system to get comps. We go to another system to maybe look at a mortgage statement. So hopefully REI Blackbook, we can just be all in one, which is kind of cool. All right, let's transition to our game plans. Last week, Rick, we talked about lease purchase. Today we're to subject to, and there's a different couple ways subject to can happen, right? What we talked about, or we've talked about subject to with the owner financing component, and that's where the seller doesn't necessarily, they're not behind, they're not, they have equity, they've been paying on time. For some reason, they need that title to transfer, maybe for tax purposes or whatever. What we're talking about, what you're going through and what I'm going through is subject twos, because we do everything contingent on finding a buyer, right? That's kind of how it's safe for us. It helps us so we don't get locked into a situation where it might not work out, right? I've been burned in the past by doing that. So we have subject to a contingent on finding a buyer. So describe that and then describe what you're going through as far as maybe a seller doesn't want that.
So, with contingent on finding a buyer, we usually do either 90 or 120 days or more, depending on if it's in the millions, it probably be longer term. But that allows us to, if you don't find a buyer within that amount of time, the purchase and sales agreement is null and void. That's just a safety net for us. So, but you do run into sellers that, in particularly with a sub two, that they have this mortgage payment. They may have two mortgage payments on another property, and they don't want to be carrying both. So we're taking over the payments on their behalf. However, they can't afford to wait the 90 days or whatever that buyer contingency is. So they don't want us to do a buyer contingency.
Yeah, and the couple of sub twos that I had were the two different situations. One, they were behind. So this is one situation where the seller is behind on their payments. We're catching them up. So in my example, they were 3 months behind, so I caught them up on the 3 months. And then you can't make a contingent on finding a buyer because then they're not going to make those payments, right? Because they haven't been making those payments. So now you can't make a contingent because then they're gonna go into pre foreclosure again. So we, as the buyer, have to make those payments right away, right?
Correct. Yep.
So now you're locked in, right? So you got to have that commitment. So we have a 3 payday system, right? A payday 1, payday 2, and a payday 3. What we look at is, okay, payday 1, we're probably not going to make a whole lot on payday one. So we want to make sure that our payday two and our payday three holistically looks good and before we commit, right?
Correct. You're going to look at, just like any other deal, you're going to look at all three paydays. So in one case, you may have a very small or a slightly negative payday two, but you may have a very large payday three. So you have to look at it holistically.
Yeah, or large principal pay down. For example, the one I got, the second example is just what you talked about. My seller had two payments going on. He didn't want to be paying on a house that's empty, so I took over right away. But my payday two was almost zero, right? However, his principal pay down was like $2,500 a month. So I'm like, yes, I'm in, right? It's huge because at the end of the day, that's going to be a big payday three. So talk about your situation, why the seller didn't want to do contingency.
Well, he has two properties and he lives in the larger one. It's a 1,000 square foot property. Single guy, him and his dog. And he had roommates before they had a child, so they moved out. So he didn't have, the house was just way too big for him. So he wanted to sell it. It didn't sell traditionally after being on the market. He was selling for sale by owner. He was against having a realtor. He didn't want to pay commissions. So he was open to a creative financing deal. However, the situation was he didn't want to, with that buyer contingency being, we set it up to be 90 days, he wanted me to purchase it or to actually make the mortgage payments on his behalf at the end of the 90 days. So I didn't have to do it right away. So that's what we were kind of going back and forth on. And looking at the three paydays, it was $186,000 three paydays. So is it worth it? Yes, because it's a sweet market. And the other thing that you have to take into consideration is the market. You feel comfortable that you can move the property.
Yeah. Yeah, great point. So there's different ways you can take over right away, like I did, right? You close on the property, you go through escrow, and the title transfers right away, and you start making those payments right away. Or you can do what you said, make it contingent. However, at the end of the marketing period, you take over right away. So you close, right? And then you start making those payments. Or you just make it contingent on finding a buyer, period. And at the end of the 90 days, you give the house back, right? So there's some sellers, that we kind of chuckled off air. Some of the sellers are like, well, I don't want to make those payments. It's like, well, if you sold traditionally, right, with a realtor or even FSBO, it's sitting there empty and you're making those payments anyway. So I don't get why, like, what's the difference? But sellers are kind of weird that way. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say now, let's we talk about what happens if that property doesn't sell and you don't have how
Right.
would you handle that?
Yeah. So there's, again, it's sub two. So the title's going to transfer. So in Rick, your case, at the end of 90 days, you close, you take over the payments right away, but you're still having a hard time selling. Right? Well, the title transferred, you own the property, right? The mortgage is staying in the seller's name, but you own the property. Could you possibly just rent it, stop the bleeding, and just rent it and just so you don't get your payday one, whoop, but you're still getting principal pay down, and then you have now time to maybe exhale and let the market kind of correct, and maybe do a 6-month lease where now you're in the summertime where it's easier to sell, right?
Right. You could actually also, if it's in a good area, you could do it in Airbnb with it. There's a lot of different options you could do.
Yep. A lot of different options. Yeah, that's why we like to own the properties. That's why sub two is kind of very attractive, because the mortgage is not in your name, right? You own the property, but you're not tied to a mortgage, which is I think that's why it's kind of a hot thing now, right? Not just us. We're not the only ones to do it, but right.
The one caution for people to understand is if you want to go that route, you need to have capital just in case. So we wouldn't recommend that for a first deal, until you get a little bit of experience with it and you feel comfortable making those payments for at least a certain amount of time.
Yep. Yeah, very important that when you're new in the community, if you guys, whoever's listening, if you guys join the community, we're not, this is high level stuff that we're talking about really, because when you first join, we're just like, okay, let's talk about lease purchase and AO, which are those are more simple. They're less, I wouldn't say aggressive, but they're less taxing maybe financially on you, because if something does happen, you're out, right? But because in sub two owner financing, the title is transferred to you. You're the owner of that home, so you have more responsibilities. You have insurance, and if something were to happen, you have to take care of it, right? Good stuff. Let's transition to our cool down, Rick. Thanks for that. We got a lot of stuff going on in the community. I just helped a student out with a 48-month lease purchase. I spoke to the sellers with David Albin on the phone. He presented 2 offers 6 months ago, 7 months ago,
Yeah.
but they decided, oh, we just want to try and sell it traditionally. As coaches and as associate, we're like, okay, go for it. What are you gonna do if it doesn't sell? Right? That's kind of our last thing. Like, what are you gonna do? Make sure you have a plan B. So we were the plan B, right? It didn't sell. So we re-engaged with them. We revisited the 2 offers that we sent them. They would make more in AO, which we've talked about multiple times in these podcasts, but they didn't want to be landlords. And we're like, okay, well, we'll stay in the middle. You're not going to make as much, but we're going to lock in your equity. They didn't need their money right away, which we talked about last week, right? And they're like, okay, let's do it. So we got that thing signed, and now we're on the marketing period. What do you have on your end as far as other associates
So
and deals that's going on?
I'm working 2 deals with Kara Taylor, and one of them, well, it was originally going to be a sub two owner finance that the seller was very open to. They were relocating to warmer weather for health reasons, as far as I recall. And however, what they wanted was to be able to pay off a truck. So they needed more of a down payment. So we pivoted to an AO, and they wanted to get like 2,500 a month for income. And the only way to do that, accomplish everything the seller wanted, was to pivot to an AO. So they were away. So we're in a follow up process right now with them. So that one looks good. And there's another one that we spoke to last week, and that could be a sub two owner finance deal. So it's awesome on that. Also working one with Jessica.
Yep, we've had Jessica on. She's kicking some major butt in the community. Talk about mindset, right? And I think you spoke to her as far as, she was doubting herself. She didn't have a deal, or she did have a deal and it fell through. So she was kind of doubting herself. You spoke with her about her why, right? And we talked about that last week, which is have a very strong why. And she recovered. And then right after she recovered, she said this could be her fourth or fifth deal, like within that time period. It's like kicking butt. There's another deal. If you ever come to this community, you can do your own properties, right? So we've had a couple of associates who had rental properties of their own, and instead of being landlords, traditional landlords that have renters, we had Rick Maroto, say his last name. He had a property, I think it was in Ohio or Iowa or somewhere around there. He did his own property. One day, the tenants left, so he went to the rent to own. So he got our help, found a rent to own buyer. The buyers were just over the top thankful that they were able to do this. It was emotional. It was a great deal. Laura now is doing the same thing. She had a rental property, and she was just tired of being a landlord. And the reason why I say tired of being a landlord, you're still a landlord technically, right, Rick? But
Right.
but these are buyers, right? So maybe describe that a little bit.
So we know the down payment is not refundable that we get from the buyers, and we also screen them differently than you would screen a regular tenant. So you're looking at debt to income ratio. The company that we use does that. They pre-screen them. They give us a mortgage ready date. So with a non-refundable down payment, and the end game for the buyer is to cash out and own the home. They treat the property as buyers, and they're responsible for all maintenance and repairs. So you don't have those traditional headaches associated with being a landlord.
Yeah, you're not getting that call at midnight. Hey, my toilet's clogged up, right? um, So yeah, so Laura, she pivoted. Their renters, I think, left last month. I'm sure she had to clean it up a little bit because renters typically don't take care of the home like we talked about just now, which is tenant buyers do. Why would you trash your own home? We tell that to sellers all the time. Why would a tenant buyer trash their own home that they're going to live in for the rest of the, maybe 5, 6, 7 years? So, and that's why AO is sort of attractive to sellers because, again, they don't have the landlord type of things that they have to deal with, right? Because we pass everything on to the tenant buyer. We pass the taxes, right? They're paying taxes on the home. They have their own insurance. They have a non-refundable down payment. If we get to 10%, if you put 10% down on let's say, a $500,000 home, that's $50K that they're going to give up if they trash the place. I put it in air quotes. If they're giving that up. Why would they give something up? So they have skin in the game, right? And so they're not gonna they're not gonna put holes in the wall in a house that they're gonna eventually own. Now they can make, we don't recommend it, but they can paint it. They can maybe do some structural things. They have to get permission from us, but I don't know. Have you ever had a tenant buyer like ask permission to like maybe put in a deck or anything like that?
I have had some tenant buyers that have made improvements. I had one that cashed out on a payday 3 a few months back,
Mm-hmm.
and she updated the inside of the property, and she closed out with almost 90,000 in equity because of it.
Oh wow. Okay.
So, yeah,
Yeah. So they have to ask permission. So hypothetically, if you need if you have to get a if you have to get a deck, and you're drilling into the foundation of the house, you got to get permission, right? Because you can't just do that on your own. Now, if you want to paint or if you want to do something, maybe remove the the kitchen table, right? And you want to replace it with marble or whatever you want to do, you can do that, right? Just got to ask permission.
yeah, and the work has to be done, with your permits and somebody who's licensed to do that. It's professionally done.
Right. Yeah. So good stuff. you know, Maybe next week we can talk about the tenant buyers because we do that a lot. We talk about this, Rick, and I spoke to um, Sandra the other day. Sandra's actually she has a duplex going on that she had to take to the lawyers, to the attorneys. And again, we do everything through our attorneys, right? Uh, Sandra's working with the seller. Seller took it to their attorneys. The attorneys wanted some things adjusted, which is fine. We want to make sure that the sellers are getting what they want. But we're helping 3 families, right? Chris talks about this, right? So who are the 3 families that we're helping out in these transactions? We're helping out the seller because they couldn't sell traditionally, right? For whatever reason, they couldn't sell traditionally. So we're solving a problem for them. Maybe they couldn't get the price they wanted. They couldn't sell traditionally. Whatever that reason is, we're solving that problem for them. So we're helping them out. We're helping the tenant buyers out because they couldn't get a loan today, but they just need some time. So we're putting them in the situation where they can own a home, sort of, and then get a loan at the end of the day, and then they can live in that home. And then they're helping. And then the third party is us, right? We're helping ourselves out. The 3 paydays. So, Rick, awesome job. Merry Christmas, buddy. I hope
Merry
you
Christmas to you, Rusty, and to your family.
I hope you get everything you want from Santa.
Same with you.
All right, everybody. Catch you guys on the other side. Merry Christmas. And Rick, I will see you next week.
Looking forward to it. And everybody have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Take care. Bye.